So welcome everyone. Welcome to this evening's conversation where we are looking at we're looking at the strategies Israel uses to silence Palestinian artists, intellectuals, and journalists. Among these strategies are assassinations, smears of antisemitism, and hasbara, a communicative strategy that Israel uses to explain actions that cannot be justified. Related mainstream media practices in Israel and the West similarly silence and gaslight Palestinians, and they also trivialize the mass atrocities, genocide, and ethnic cleansing, and the war crimes that Israel is committing. How are arts and alternative journalism challenging the silencing, the gaslighting, and the disinformation, and also the violence? To look at this issue, we've got 5 speakers. We've got Atef Al-Shah, who is a senior lecturer in Arabic studies at the University of Westminster. He was educated at Birzeit University in Palestine and the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, where he obtained his PhD and taught for a number of years. We've also got Rawand Akawi, who is director of Fragments Theatre in Jenin, and is also a driving force in the project Mayday. And we've got Selma Dabag, who is a writer of fiction and a lawyer. A first novel out of it, which was published by Bloomsbury, was mainly set in Gaza. And she's also edited We Wrote in Symbols, Love and Lust by Arab Women Writers, which was published in 2021. And we've got Zoe Lafferty, who is Associate Artistic Director with the Freedom Theatre in Palestine, and she's also founder of Artists on the Front Line. And finally, we've got Caroline Rulli, who is an arts activist and Professor Emeritus of African and Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Kent. And Caroline has poems that have been published in Protest, 150 Poems for Human Rights, which was published a few years back. And she's also directed and produced documentary films on conflicts in the Middle East and mounted performances and events on refugee experiences. I don't know, maybe as a way of starting, we turn to our speakers. In that introduction that I've given, is there anything that I've left out?
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you, Ambrose, for hosting this, and to Civic Leicester and all of you who are attending. So I'm a writer of fiction and I'm a lawyer, and in this context, I think I'm just going to say a couple of words from the outset with regards to the targeting of journalists, which has been, at the moment, the levels are really record-breaking globally. The campaign for the protection of journalists says that it's never had, since it started monitoring in 1992, it has never had such a high level of death of what appear to be systematic and targeted attacks on journalists, particularly in Gaza. So, I mean, for some of you who've been following Palestinians before October the 7th, I think the most groundbreaking and well, not groundbreaking, it sounds awful to describe it in that way, but the most shocking attack on a journalist was the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh in Jenin on May the 11th, 2022. And following from that, I was involved as part of a legal team in making submissions to the International Criminal Court, showing that killing as being part of a targeted and a systematic targeting of journalists, of which there had been many previously. And yeah, and then with I think it will be shown through the different speakers who are speaking today, but it has to be seen as like one level of trying to silence and to blind the world to what is going on in Palestine by the Israeli forces, which also involves the attacks on artists and creatives. But yeah, so yeah, I think I'll stop there and just leave it for Caroline to continue. I can come in on other points with regards to artists later.
Sorry, would you like me to carry on, Ambrose?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I thought I'd start with saying a few things about what I've come to call the Israeli corruption of language, with reference to various writers who've written on this. That's something I've kind of done some work on. I'll try and explain it. Yeah, I'll begin with a quotation from a Zimbabwean poet. I'm from Zimbabwe, and so is Ambrose. So I thought I'd quote from Chenjerai Ho, who is a very significant Zimbabwean poet. And he said, in analyzing political corruption in Zimbabwe, he said, "I believe that corruption begins with the corruption of language. If a senior politician uses vulgar language in public, that is the beginning of corruption. Once language degenerates into a vehicle for untruth, people are engulfed in a form of corruption." And this is something that's been actually a preoccupation of many writers, including George Orwell, W.H. Auden. I'd like to sort of just quote from Auden here, because he says much the same as Chenjerai. He says, Auden says, "There's one evil which should never be passed over in silence, but continually publicly attacked, and that is the corruption of language." So he calls this an evil. And I'd now like to just relate that to Palestinian poet Mourid Barghouti, who wrote an essay called Verbicide, in which he addresses what he calls the polluted and vulgarized language of the Israelis. And he states, "The Israeli occupation imposes a double, triple, endless redefinition of the Palestinian. Call him militant, outlaw, criminal, terrorist, irrelevant, cancer, cockroach, serpent, virus. The list becomes endless." And he says, the ploy on Israel's part is be the one who makes the definitions, define, classify, demonize, misinform, simplify, stick on the labels, then send in the tanks. And he ends this essay, written some years ago, with the question, can verbicide, this corruption of language, lead to genocide? So he says that there is this link between corrupt uses of language and genocide, and I think that you know what is important for those of us, especially in the arts, is that this is a struggle over representation and a struggle over words. It's a struggle to be heard, but also a struggle over how words are used. So I think that's a question. In fact, Barghouti goes on to sort of also address how poetry is important in this context. He says, of the power of poetry, "Poetry remains one of the astonishing forms in our hands to resist obscurantism and silence." So for him, poetry and creative uses of language is capable of restoring meaning to language in some way when meaning is being taken away from it. So those are just some thoughts that we could perhaps address. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Karen. We go to Rewand.
First, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Rawan Darfawi. I live in Jenin. I'm the founder of Fragment Theater, and also I'm helping Zoe to show the world about what is happening in Jenin, because for me it's very important, like, to open the open eyes toward Jenin, because no one knows how the artists or the world or the people there suffer a lot from the attack every day, almost every day in Jenin. And so I want to just mention, this is something, it's very important for me, like when they attacked the journalist, the journalist in Gaza, this is started also from Jenin, like when they assassinated Shireen Abu Akleh, and just all the world like kept silent, and no one mentioned about how it's very important, like to keep going, to continue supporting this case. Okay, just everyone was writing this on Facebook. Lots of people protest about this, but no one cares to say that really cared. And for keeping silent, and how we reach to the to this journey, because silence is not started from these days. No, the word, everyone was afraid like to say any word towards what is happening in Palestine since 48, and lots of invasions, lots of people who were killed, lots of people who were injured, lots of people who evacuated from Palestine, and all the world kept silent. So, and now what is happening in Gaza, because Israeli army, they use like all the world to keep silent. Now it's the price for them, but no one can stop them because the world kept silent since 48. So this is, I wanted to to put these points like for you guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I don't know.
Zoe?
Who, and then we have, is it
Zoe? Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
So I mean, I suppose it's really like this whole, I want to say ecosystem, but I'm looking for the opposite word of an ecosystem. But this whole sort of system of attacks, and of course, some of those are much more brutal than others, but it is very important, I think, to look at it as a whole system of censorship, which, as you mentioned, includes the murder of artists, imprisonment of artists, destruction of cultural heritage, buildings, archives, equipment, the physical stealing of artifacts, cultural appropriation, this whole system of misinformation. As British people, we have a whole visa system that stops artists, and in particular Palestinian artists, being able to come and tour their work in the UK. Obviously, there's so much cancellation happening of Palestinian artists, particularly in the West. And then, of course, when you move into digital spaces, because that's the sort of the next option, then there is a system that's, stopping digital meetings and collaborations happening, and shadow banning on digital platforms. And then as part of this, a kind of real attack on the funding systems for Palestinian artists and Palestinian organizations. And each one of these areas, I feel like, it's possible to go into a lot of detail, because again, they are all systems within themselves. I think that what's very interesting as artists, as every way that Israel and the West are kind of attacking freedom of speech and causing censorship, our job is to be innovative and find new ways. And a lot of the censorship I mentioned is happening to the Freedom Theatre. And then, of course, our job is to consider how to find different ways to respond to that. And both myself, and I would say the Freedom Theatre as well, is making theatre productions on stages. So now we have to find ways, whether that is through virtual reality, through that's mass mobilization projects with storytelling, or as Rwand mentioned, we've got a new project called Mayday, which is kind of exploring what artist-led citizen journalism can look like. and maybe we can go into more detail on that later. So yeah, I think it's both, as people continue to innovate around these issues, then the censorship to kind of match that, and it is sort of, yeah, this sort of back and forth system, I would say.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you. And I think we hear from Selma next.
Hi, yeah, no, I just, I mean, I think Zoe summed up very well the list of the ways in which Palestinian voices and Palestinian space is being closed down upon, and it's always, since the beginning, for reasons that Rwand mentioned, that there's always been this sort of struggle to get out a Palestinian voice for Palestinian artists and those representing Palestinian realities, which is challenging, particularly working in, you know, other languages, is challenging so much misunderstanding, that there's always been pressures put on, for example, Palestinian writers to write in a way that can kind of explain out a lot of the political narrative whilst not losing sight of what they're trying to do artistically, to continue to connect emotionally. And this in itself makes the sort of the space of Palestinian art and literature and drama quite distinctive in ways which we can see as being positive as well, in terms of a sort of creative force coming out of necessity. But these ways of trying to chill and control the space as well of the cultural space of Palestinians do range, as Zoe was saying, really from, like, you know, from the legal restrictions to the brutal. I mean, you get the whole array of ways of trying to stop people from trying to communicate out realities or to accept or to, I mean, people don't like this word humanize, but it seems that we're stuck in this position where it's still something that we seem to have to do because there's such incredibly racist vocabulary which is not being challenged. So it's like we're being pushed back into positions where we really shouldn't have to be, and it's obnoxious and objectionable that we even have to think about these things. But that's the nature of where things have slipped, have gone to with this, you know, this incredibly, I mean, the kind of government at the moment in Israel and the genocidal intent that is coming out of that government in a way that is not just not challenged, as Rwand was saying, but is also being enabled by governments in the West, is something that is, for those of us who live in, I don't know, the UK, it's really, even when we've never been great supporters of what our government's position with regards to Israel, this is a new level which has been quite sort of destabilizing and incredibly disillusioning to have to deal with. It's a very very sobering space, I guess you could say. But on the other side, and I don't want to just be negative, there are initiatives being taken in terms of activist groups, in terms of sit-ins, in terms of demonstrations, in terms of work being carried out by artists, and a lot of people being more innovative in what they're doing. And it's this, you know, as Caroline put it, with regards to the ways of challenging the corruption of language and the awareness that we're building as to what corrupt language looks like and why it is important to continue to challenge it and to pick people up on it. I think that that's something that perhaps Palestinian artists may become, you know, more sort of forefront, perhaps, with regards to that recognition of the kind of doublespeak that we're getting out of our governments. Yeah.
Yes, Carol.
Yeah, Selma, I'd like to ask you about your blogs, because I really enjoyed the blogs that you did for the LRB. And I was just interested in how that came about and also what kind of responses you had to them. But you know, I was kind of actually surprised to see them published there. They were very, very powerful, and yeah, it was great that they were there. So can you say a little bit more about
Yeah,
it?
sure. I mean, it's I wrote one blog for the LRB in 2015, and then I just, when this happened, I was just, you know, I was really feeling a bit, I mean, I just wanted, I mean, some people say, look, it's a really hard time to write, but actually for me, it's the only thing that really helps. I mean, I'm obvious, and I feel even bad to talk about how I feel about this, because I mean, the most I have is I have friends who have family there. I've had friends in Gaza. I'm not living in Gaza. I'm an incredibly privileged place. So I feel very guilty about talking at all about any sort of hardship on my front, because I'm obviously, it's nothing. But I approached them, and partly through Marina Warner, who is on the editorial board and is a friend, to just see if that's something that they would be interested in. And they've been very receptive. And it's not just me, there are quite a few Palestinian writers. And then I've just sort of, they also, the LRB, the main, I'm just in the blog space, but in the main journal, there are writers, not necessarily just Palestinian, but there are some quite hard-hitting pieces coming out as well from Conor Gearty, the lawyer, and others, following the International Court of Justice ruling, which has sadly been so undercovered, so badly covered in this country. I think absolutely shocking, and that the BBC didn't cover the South African case. And I really think that it's sometimes a sign that you're being powerful, to see that when you're being censored. It's, you know, I mean, it's almost like, in a terrible way, like the killing of people of like Rifat El Arir shows that culture can be powerful, that a poet, a gentle, sweet man who just writes words has got a power. There is a power of, you know, of culture against the culture of power, but it does threaten people. So yeah, the LRB has come up, has really, the London Review of Books has really been one of the few outlets. I think also Lit Hub in the US. I haven't been following New York Review of Books very much. The Nation, obviously, they've got Mohammed El-Kurd as one of the editors. My understanding historically is that Edward Said met with Mary Kay Wilmers, who's the former editor-in-chief of the London Review of Books, and over a series of meetings and correspondence that he was able to persuade her, you know, to bring her around on the issue of Palestine. So that has kind of like opened up a little bit of space in a very restricted environment. In terms of censorship on my own pieces, there's nothing I didn't really see a logic to in terms of making them flow a bit. And particularly my early pieces, I was really quite ranting. So I needed to be turned in a bit, because perhaps it's a little too emotional.
Or maybe thinking about how we can proceed with the conversation. Maybe we could start with a recap of where we are now and how we got here. I don't know, does anyone want to start? What is happening in Israel and Palestine? What is happening in Gaza? What is happening in East Jerusalem and the West Bank right now?
I mean, I can try and do like a segue into that, which links also to artist censorship. Maybe some of the team might want to just clean up my facts if they're not entirely correct. But I mean, I suppose one of the best starting points is the British and the British mandate. And I think it's very interesting if you look at what they also were doing around artistic censorship. as far as I've managed to find, one of the first records of an artist being killed is the popular poet Nur Ibrahim, who was murdered by the British in 1936. He was also imprisoned by the British, and he spoke about these new laws that were implemented that were around sort of putting, I think, as far as I remember, academics and intellectuals in prison. And as far as I understand, this is very much the system that has gone on to be developed by Israel of administrative detention. And administrative detention, as I'm sure many people know, is effectively an imprisonment without trial or charge. And this is what I think, I mean, thousands and thousands of Palestinians are imprisoned using, and this includes artists. And right now, the Freedom Theatre's producer, Mustafa Shetta, is just being given 6 months of administrative detention. So there's no charge, there's no trial. Sometimes there's this secret evidence, which is secret evidence, so it probably doesn't exist. And as I said, it's very much used to target artists. So I don't know if that entirely answered your question, but I think it is really interesting and important to look at what the British were doing during their time of colonializing Palestine, and how that has in some ways been a model to continue what's happening today, and including like the persecution of artists and those who are speaking out.
Thank you. How about you, Rawand and Selma and Caroline as well? What is happening?
I'd like to hear more about the Mayday project from Rawand and Zoe, about how it is tackling the censorship and so on.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah. I just want to mention about what you asked, like what is happening, like what's my opinion regarding what is happening especially for the artists, as I am running like a small theater in Jenin. So every time, like when we apply for a grant, so they're always got the freedom of speech and there is, but when we try like to speak or to talk against Israel or against what is happening in Jenin, so we see lots of even on Facebook we can't about what is happening in Jenin sometimes. Like if you and we live in this city, and lots of people who were killed and from by Israeli army. And when you put someone post about him, sometimes you had warning because you put about someone who is terrorist. So there is no freedom of speech. This is your neighbor, and you feel sad about him, and you want just only to express about your feelings toward him. So it's normal, like to post put his photo or post about him, and then you get a warning because you express. So, and then also there is lots of conditions toward the fund. So you can't only work with someone who was in the prison one day, and also with the children who were if someone has his father in the prison, and so you can't, because so many people were from Palestine, or especially Jenin, they were in the prison. Sometimes they kidnapped them from the street, and it doesn't matter. They have to do something to be in the prison. So this is exactly what is happening in Jenin, and just you only can't work with them. So lots of conditions toward this fund, and of course we can't accept it because this is our community. We can't just only work with like few people. and just only, okay, let's go and choose these, because his father is not in the prison. His father, this is unbelievable. So this is started like has started since 2000, I think 19, and all the organization stopped this fund. So lots of obstacles toward the art, and there is no freedom to speech. So I think they started a war against the artists and also against the arts organization. So this is kind of what is happening in regarding the culture. And now also for the artists, that not only at the Freedom Theater were arrested, like Bilal and the general manager, and also the chairperson of the board, and also in Circus of School, school of Palestine School. There is also 2 people who were arrested, and recently so many young people were killed by Israeli army in Nur Shams. Also, they are artists, but unfortunately, no one knows about, especially in north of Palestine, in Jenin, Tulkarem, and also Kalkilia. So lots of the artists, they face lots of problems, lots of things that are happening with them, but no one knows about them. So this is like what is happening for now, and this is started since 2019, as I mentioned.
Thank you. How about you, Caroline, and so, in your view, what is happening? What do you see happening?
Sorry, in terms of what? In terms of what?
In terms of the silencing, what are you seeing?
I think that Israel is afraid of the integrity of the artists when they speak, because it's very compelling and convincing. So that's why they want to silence it. I think that actually you can tell that the Palestinians are speaking the truth, and they're desperate to kind of put their own spin on it, and to have that accepted as the official thing. I mean, how is it that we're sitting through what is a genocide, and how is that being possible without the way in which Israel and people supporting Israel are dominating the narrative? I don't know how many times we hear like these repeated memes about Israel's defense, and no one even challenges it. It's not a defense, and we've got to use the right language, I think, and so, the poets that whose work does get circulated, and Rifat's work has been very moving, and it really touches people. Many others actually, and somehow people respond to the truth in their words, and Israel is afraid of that. That's what I think.
How about you, Sam?
Well, I mean, I think tying into what Zoe said is in terms of, quite hard to summarize the whole thing, but I mean, there has been this inherited military legislation which is a hangover from the time of the British Mandate, and it's totally ingrained in the way that the Israeli society has developed. One of the most militant and extremist radical British army officers, Ord Wingate, was one of the founders of the current Israeli so-called defense forces. So you've got this structure of laws which keep down the sort of the natives and and prioritize another group, a separate group. And then within the way that the state's declaration, the Israeli state's declaration of independence was set up, you automatically have prioritization of one group on the basis of its religion and ethnic origin. And I just feel that there can't be an example of any country in the world where if you set it up from the outset that some people are born into a level of superiority, that it doesn't go in any direction apart from sort of making those, like pushing down one group. It just cannot, it is predestined to end in a unharmonious way. It's a recipe for disaster. So I think any kind of idea about solution has to look very carefully at the apartheid framework, which was spelt out very clearly in 2022 by a series of human rights organizations. So it was very brave, thorough work, which was done by the Palestinian organizations, and they've been working on it for 20 years. It started in Durban in 2002 in South Africa. So that was the start of this idea of apartheid. And then it was picked up later in 2022 with the main Israeli human rights organization, under the fantastic leadership of I've just got blank on his name. I was going to call him Haider Eid, but it will come back to me. Yes, it will come back to me. But Salem, the Israeli human rights organization, then you had Human Rights Watch, then you had Amnesty International. So you've got the framework of apartheid. That is how it should be seen. You've got this very problematic way of governing two groups of people within a particular area of land. And you have to go to the root cause, which is this discrimination between people. And that has to be broken down. That has to be, and you have to talk about the language of liberation and the language of self-determination when you're looking at solutions. And that's what these artists are doing. And obviously it runs completely contrary to this really, militaristic, I think the word fascist is not too extreme in many circumstances that we've ended up with. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's why the artists are so at risk, because everything they're saying is so humane, it's so sensible, it calls to the language of egalitarianism and humanism and like who we are as people and what we value and love of family and need to like have ideals and a sense of, there's also a kind of like people want to believe in something better. I don't know that hate coalesces people for as long a period of time as these sort of more, I don't know, it sounds a bit hippyish to say, but sort of more humane and loving forces that some of this poetry and work is able to get across. I think people don't want to see themselves as being as hateful. I mean, it's gaining huge traction in Israel at the moment in terms of, you look at some of the soldiers' blogs and the boasts, and the culture has gone somewhere due to the educational system that I don't know how we're going to come back from it. But yeah, sorry, that's my 2 cents worth. I don't know if that answers the question.
And then I'm going to ask the same question to people who are in the audience, if you would like to speak. Maybe if you just comment on what you're seeing, because I'm doing this because of there's a reason for it. Because one of the things that's happening with how this genocide is being policed is that you are encouraged to doubt what you're seeing with your own eyes. You're told that what you're seeing is not happening, that something else is happening. So I'm inviting, those of you who are present, who are listening, what are you seeing? Anyone who wants to speak, if you unmute, what are you seeing? Okay.
I can kick off. If the audience is shy, I can kick off. I know also, Caroline, I'll come back to your question at some point around May Day, but to kick off this, I think one thing I feel is is so important to emphasize is how much like I'm seeing, certainly in the UK, people actually learning from and adopting all of the different innovations and ideas and strategies that Palestinians have built and been doing for decades. And what I see now is how much you know, we are in Britain learning from that, adopting that, and not only using that to stand up for Palestinian rights, but also to stand up to our own issues of freedom of expression, our own government who's obviously clamping down on our rights in terms of protest, and you know, borders and all sort of, you know, we can go on and on with a list of the things that the Tory government are doing right now. And so I think that it's an incredible positive, and for me, like, such an inspiration just to see like how those things are being adopted in the UK. And I think so often it's spoken of people being in solidarity with Palestine, but I really think we have to flip that and say that Palestine, you know, is in solidarity with us. People, artists, journalists, human rights defenders in Palestine are teaching us how we can stand up for our own rights in Britain. So yeah, that's one thought maybe to start off.
Thank you. And then we hear from Dr. Eva Hunt.
Yes, I just wanted to say that what I see is that, yes, there are people demonstrating every weekend, either locally or in London and around the world. But I also see a lot of reticence still in the general public. Yes, you know, we get beeps and things like that from people driving past and stuff like that. But actually, I see a lot of reticence really still, because the main narratives that are being driven by mainstream media are still very much driving the Palestinian people as terrorists, and that this is a very, very divisive topic. And so, yeah, it's difficult to drive a wedge through that that control and corruption and deception by mainstream media. And it's I don't know how that we can address that so that actually people are having the commitment to be able to read and learn and participate in these demonstrations, until we reach a tipping point where not only the government but the opposition, whose behavior is appalling in this country, are standing up to Israel.
Thank you. How about you, Julia, Aza, and Debbie? What are you seeing?
Well, I'm not sure about the situation in England, in Britain, but it's not any better here in Canada and North America, of course. And well, I've seen like firsthand a medical practitioner, a general practitioner, a doctor, a medical student from Gaza who unfortunately lost her parents, both her parents, and I attended the funeral, and it was a very sad event. And like very shortly afterwards, because of her Facebook posts, she was prohibited from practicing medicine. And like there was this group that is like now known about on X, so Twitter, and they're using their influence in order to stop Palestinian and pro-Palestinian medical students, for example, from practicing medicine in Canada and North America. There's also Bill Ackman. Of course, I'm quite sure that everybody knows about the guy, and how, for example, we have lists of academics. Now Harvard students, like an entire list of Harvard students who participated in demonstrations, announced by Harvard, and then it was taken down. His account was taken down. The CEO's account on Twitter, on X, was taken down because he did actually publish names of students who are pro-Palestinian and, you know, who posted in support of Palestine on their Facebook and Twitter and so on. So it's not just discrimination against actors and writers. Unfortunately, it's way worse than that, at least here in North America. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah. How about you, Julia and Debbie?
Well, I was going to say that it's probably less open and more insidious, less open than what you described as is going on in Canada, which actually I feel quite shocked about because that's where I'm from originally. But there's definitely this insidious, underhanded trying to silence people who speak out in support of Palestine. So in my profession of psychotherapy, for example, it's in my day-to-day work, it doesn't affect me, but in institutional organizations to which I belong to, yes, very much. Yeah, there have been attacks, concerted attacks going on to people who have spoken out. So it's it's really sobering, and I guess it's important to just keep going, to keep at it, to keep saying no. We see what we see, Ambrose, to answer that question. We see the massacre. We see what's happening. We read between the lines of what mainstream media allows. We see that the lies, the misinformation. We could get in. We could read the poets. So that's why, as the voices of the poets are so important, because there's a ring of authenticity and truth, and could open our eyes and read and understand. Well, yes, yeah.
Yes, Debbie. Thank you, Julia. Thank you. Yes, Debbie.
So, yeah, just a couple of things. I mean, I've been looking at different news sources. So I read Haaretz painfully, but it's like the centrist paper of Israel. I suppose it's as confused as the Guardian, but and it sticks as its its flagship line is it sticks to the standard thing of, well, they changed from 1400 to 1200, ignoring the Hannibal Directive and all of that, and it keeps calling the health service the Hamas-controlled health service. Well, who else is going to control the health service? It's the government. It's a very interesting source because it does have opinion pieces, and it is quite interesting seeing kind of cracks in Israel. Israel isn't homogenous. There are, liberals, well, as far as you can be liberal in Israel. I mean, I call it Islam real, but there are voices that are questioning, and that there are some little glimmers there. And then I read something like One Device or Electric Intifada, and I feel on more comfortable ground in what's there. And I think it's very important to look at these news sources to see, how it's portrayed. And then on the ground, I mean, we all of us must, first we were looking for Motas, now we look for Lama, we look for Wizam, we look for other journalists to see how they're feeling. And what I'm feeling from them is, I don't know what is getting through of what we're doing. I don't know if they are seeing all the demonstrations, or if they do get any feel of support, because I feel that they're a kind of groundswell for everybody. They're like the frontline voices, but the people behind them, what are they knowing of the kind of level of support there is? And I think that's a very that's a factor to help survival.
Thank you. Glenn, did you want to say something before we go back to the speakers? You're on mute.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
I would just mention briefly that people who are involved in the Labour Party, who are involved in caring about what's going on and post on that, have been quite substantially persecuted. I mean, I as a non-Jewish person, was put under investigation, but I have to say that that is a very small minority, because 6 of the 7 people that Labour investigates for anti-Semitism, which isn't anti-Semitism, it's anti-Zionism, are Jewish people. So there's something really quite problematic there about how our representative democracy is forbidding us to speak. That's enough.
Thank you. So we're going to come back to all these things, but for now, maybe we go to Rewand. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Maybe if you could say more about Freedom Theater, and Mayday.
To talk about first that I was working at the Freedom Theater in the beginning in 2005 till 2013. And at that time, like our theater director, he was half an Israeli and half Palestinian, and he was really great man. Like when he was sending the message to the world, around the world, about what is happening in Palestine, about the freedom of Palestine, about that. But suddenly he was assassinated, and no one knows till now who killed this man. And always feel that because anyone who supports Palestine and who speak about Palestine, of course, even like he has an Israeli ID. So when someone killed in and he has an Israeli ID, so Israel makes lots of investigation, arrested so many people to find the killer, and really they put lots of money to find the killer. But Giuliano, of course, no one knows about till now. So this is the challenge starts from that point. Like when Israeli they didn't care about Giuliano Merhamir and ignored his case. And later on, like lots of people who were working at the Freedom Theater, or also the beneficiaries, the children, they have very nice time at that before I can say in 2013, 14, they were just only adults. They had so much fun at the Freedom Theater. They were just only coming, enjoying the space. I worked with these children, and I know their dreams that everyone wants. Every time, like when I see that children, okay, we want to travel, we want in the dream travel to live normal life, and then so lots of people were murdered by Israeli army because what is happening for them when Jenin is attacked by Israeli army, they respond, but really they had very nice, also the good position in their life. So some people they study at the university, they work, they have also shops. But when they see that the Israeli attack and kill their friends, their neighbors, so of course they respond. So how these people respond? So they are terrorists to respond, and they want them to send them flowers. Okay, come kill us, and we give you flowers. Everyone wants to respond. So every time, the Palestinians are terrorists. So it doesn't matter. If you speak out, you are terrorist. If you talk again, criticize the Palestinian, even Palestinian authority, you don't think that also the artists, they don't suffer from Palestinian authority. They are the same, because everyone knows that how now the Palestinian Authority keep silent toward what is happening in Gaza and also in Palestine, and everyone knows why the Palestinian Authority exists. So, like, to be an artist, especially in Jenin refugee camp, it means that you have to fight. It's not easy life. It's um, also like when we work with the people and suddenly just only you hear the announcement in the city that we just only want to tell you that this guy he was murdered by Israel yesterday, last night. This is yani normal life. So every night, every day, in the morning, in the evening, you don't know. And also, now I'm working with the children in psychological support, like give them a training. But how can always we pretend that we are okay, but we are not. We are not. Sometimes like we have to leave the city just to breathe and come back to Jenin to continue with the children. But no one is. What is happening is as a kill us. What is happening in not smash, we are heartbroken, but also like to lose your the artist. Like these artists had the kids. They wanted to travel. They wanted to make play. They wanted to do lots of things, and in the end, just only see them their funeral, and then just only if you want to meet them, you go to the graveyard just to see the children, the kids. So, it's lots of things like to speak, but for me, it's very sensitive. It's very hard. It's very, everything is really, really, really difficult. So, for us, like I see a lot, some changes in the world, like in around the world, especially like for now in UK, which I feel that the most important country, UK, of course, and also United States. But we can't say that it's only United States and also America. Two countries are only supporting Israel. No, it's also for example, Jordan, Egypt. Everyone kept silent, keep silent. Even like the food, they can't send the food for the Palestinian people in Gaza, but they can send the food for the Israeli. They are afraid, like worried about they are hungry. So, I don't know, like, why all the people can do anything toward the Palestinian people, toward the children. It's not. If you are against fighters, okay, go fight and go to the fighters. But why that every time you have to punish the children? And this is we used to in Jenin. There is a lot of people in Jenin when they were fighting and they were resisting in Jenin camp. So they punished his father, his mother, his neighbor, even his neighbor. They don't care about like, okay, he did mistake. And I just only can also share story. My sister, she was in the prison, and she was she was an activist in 2000, but she was released, and she said like, okay, she's an artist. She's painting and do lots of embroidery stuff. She decided, okay, I want to continue my life and also start again and do focus about my art. And she opened a shop. So, but what is happening now with her? She can't move. She can't, yeah, because she was one day in the prison. She can't move. If she wants to go to Jordan, she is not allowed to enter Jordan because one day she was in the prison, and and she said like what, yani, they encourage the people when they put all of these crazy things. So they encourage the people, or okay, she's doing art. She wants to send her message to the world, and she make a resistance through her art. Okay, she was in a prison, but why the punishment till now? She was released in 2007. Till now, they are still both obstacles because she can't travel, she can't move, she can't have permission even to go to Jerusalem to pray in an Aqsa mosque. So yeah, I think yeah, this is really difficult. Yani, yeah, difficult.
Thank you, Ron. How about you, Zoe? What's
I can come
what's
back
yeah.
to Caroline's question that she asked. I think a few questions back to each other since end of 2009. But this is a much more recent project, so I can talk a little bit about it. I think the first thing to say that the Freedom Theatre, because despite the fact that Israel had bulldozed a large majority of Jenin refugee camp, despite the fact that they continually invade, that they'd killed at least 52 people in this 10-day invasion of Jenin camp, that they had imprisoned a huge proportion of the men, basically Israel had committed these atrocious crimes in Jenin camps. But despite all of this, the world's media still was calling, Palestinians terrorists, and that somehow they were to blame or deserved these attacks and these crimes. And so the Freedom Theatre really came out of the Second Intifada, and it was founded by Juliana Meir-Kamis, as Rwand mentioned, who was assassinated in 2011, and also Zakaria Zubeidi, who was one of the leaders of the Palestinian armed resistance, who is now, imprisoned by Israel. And actually, sorry, this is a slight segue, but some of you will maybe remember I'm going to go for 2022, September 2022. He was one of the 6 people who dug his way out of the prison in using a spoon, and then escaped for a week before he was recaptured with the Israelis. By the Israelis. Anyway, Zakaria was the co-founder with Giuliano of the Freedom Theatre, and Rwanda was a huge part of that as well. As I said, to speak about the Palestinian narrative, the Palestinian perspective, and tell the world what was actually going on in Jenin camp, and not just the sort of Israeli army spokesperson version of why they were killing and attacking Palestinians. So, as I said, like, the Freedom Theatre has always done a whole array of different types of arts, but the core of that has been theatre. And then, I mean, it wasn't sort of, there was maybe different elements that came into this, but let's say in July 2023, there was this very intensive attack. It was actually the largest attack since the Second Intifada on Jenin and Jenin refugee camp by the Israeli army. And I wasn't in Jenin during this time. But what I became very aware of was the narratives that I was getting from both the team at the Freedom Theatre, but also people like Rwand, who's gone on to set up her own organization, Fragments. And I was getting a lot of the, information, because I was obviously asking people, are you okay? What's happening? What's going on? And then, because I have access to the Freedom Theatre social media, I was putting what they were telling me up onto the social media, and trying to get that message out to the world. And it became very clear that we needed to sort of develop a system where we're taking, you know, the first-hand accounts of the team on the ground in Jenin camp and Jenin, and getting that out, you know, through our own channels to the world. And whilst theatre is fantastic, you know, a theatre production can take a year, 2 years to create. So we needed to find a sort of method that took the skill sets of artists, but could get that out very, very quickly. And that's how Mayday kind of came about. And as I said, it's called sort of artist-led citizen journalism, which, excuse my language, sounds a bit wanky, but it is exactly what it says. It's artists who are reporting, you know, from Jenin as things are happening. And, you know, there's obviously the kind of format that you have to look at in the immediate, but there's also challenges like the first thing the Israeli army will do is take down the internet in Jenin, and then they'll also cut the electricity. So, you know, and you can go online and see lots of the different reports, but for example, Rwanda, all she needs to do is send me a voice note, and that doesn't need much electricity, and you can kind of get it out when there's patches of internet. And I suppose what we're trying to do is just get that window into what's happening in a way that I have, because I have, you know, friends and colleagues there, and then put that out onto a global platform. And, you know, Mayday is obviously like the specific project that we're working on, but you can see in all the different capacities how powerful and effective this has been from people in Gaza who, you know, obviously someone like Motaz is probably the most famous, but, you know, from social media, just that reporting has sort of garnered this huge platform and given a window that I would say, like, before 2014-ish was simply not possible. So I think it goes back maybe to what I was originally saying, is Israel finds different ways to censor, to obstruct. Our job as artists is to kind of take our skill sets and find alternatives, and this Mayday has been our platform, and also is really important, because as part of the invasions, the colonialism, the genocide, what they're doing is isolating. As far as I understand, international journalists can't go into Gaza unless they are with the IDF. So obviously they're not going to get what's really happening. And we see that again in Jenin. When there's invasions, there's very, very rarely international journalists on the ground, and therefore they don't seem to always want to connect with the Palestinians on the ground. They just take the Israeli narrative, or you'll get like a soundbite from a Palestinian in Jenin camp wedged between like Netanyahu and, like, I don't know, their own sort of misleading context, you know, of what's happening. And therefore it's like, okay, let's just leave all this behind and build our own systems where we can put out what's happening from people in Jenin, from their firsthand experiences. And I suppose, you know, find ways that is both truthful, factual, and direct, but also like creative to a certain extent, because at the end of the day, like, people are artists, and therefore, like, that human connection and that element of creativity also draws in people to listening. And as I said, like, Rwanda has been a huge part of that project, and you can really go and listen to a lot of her reports that she's been sending. And what's really interesting is now, even we put these reports back to back, and you get this whole, like, we started this probably in about September, it got up and running, August, September, and you get like this real, like, I don't know what the word is, but like, I suppose feeling or understanding of what is going on in Jenin and Jenin camp throughout these months. and all the sort of different layers and levels of it.
Is it in Arabic or English or both? Or
it's in English at the moment. I mean, I have to say, like, the project is largely targeting Western audience, and it's also happening in the immediate as quickly as possible. So at the moment, we've kind of started to shift a little bit into Arabic, but we haven't managed quite how to do the two languages super quickly. And because really the target audience is in the West, English has been the chosen language to get them to understand what's going on. But I have to say, and I know, like, AI is probably a whole nother meeting and conversation and obstacles and things to consider, but there is a bit of a interesting possibility that's opening now, that actually, like, you can get auto translate into many languages. And I think, like, in the next 6 months and the next year, we're going to see that massively develop, and therefore the possibilities of getting things out into multiple languages very quickly will be there. And I think, just bear in mind, you know, we are working off zero budget. So of course, in an ideal world, you'd have a whole team of, like, paid translators, but this is just not even a possibility. So that those types of auto translate that are rapidly, like, developing right now, whilst they're not without their problems, are very good in maybe being able to access wider audiences.
Yeah. And then maybe you could also say something about Freedom Theatre has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe if you
we're yet to put out an official announcement on this. So yes, it has. And I think that I think there's not much to add to that, apart from it has been nominated. There's also a huge amount of other Palestinian organizations, human rights defenders, journalists from Palestine who've been nominated, which, you know, just rightly so, to be honest. And as the Freedom Theatre, we will make a statement on this, but yes, that's happened. And in a way that is a huge collective effort across over a decade, including from people like Rwand here today, you know, Giuliano, who was the co-founder, who was murdered, Zakaria Zubeidi, the co-founder, who's in prison, Mustafa Shetta, our current producer, who's in prison. You know, a lot of people have given a huge amount to build that theatre, and also people outside of Palestine, you know, friends, supporters. And so it's hopefully a real tribute to, like, this massive collective effort that is led by a team in Palestine. So yeah.
So maybe this is one of my maybe last two questions. I'll start with you, Caroline, and also as you're in Canada, and also if anyone else is in other countries other than the UK or Canada, if you could also come in, that would be appreciated. My question is this: one of the things that is happening in the UK is that you've got senior government ministers who have got family that are serving in the IDF, and at the same time they are making laws governing protests. I'm thinking here, she's no longer a minister, but what she said, the things that she set in motion are still taking effect. I'm thinking of Suella Braverman, who who has said, publicly, while she was still Home Secretary, at the same time as she was calling for a ban on from the river to the sea and protests, etc., where she described her husband as a proud Zionist. And she also talked about how they've got family that are serving in the IDF. And at the same time, they're passing legislation, that criminalizes, protesters, pro-Palestine protesters. And also in the US, we've got Joe Biden, who is a non-Zionist. Yeah, he's been for many years. My question is, how is this allowed to happen where a country like Britain, like Canada, like the United States, can legislate domestically to almost as if they're transplanting Israeli laws into Britain and also into Canada. How is this possible?
Well, I'd have to say that having lived in the UK before moving to Canada, I find it way more tolerant when it comes to solidarity with Palestine. In spite of all what you're saying now about all the British, well, sometimes attempts to censor and restrict solidarity with Palestine, it is like a friction of what's literally happening in North America. Right. However, and which is very interesting, Israel has not won this discursive battle this time. Surprisingly, and I was astonished by this. I do not know a single person, maybe in the academia in specific, who's not in support of Palestine, at least for now, because everybody knows about the genocide. So, and because of this, there is tremendous support, even if it's not vocal, even if it's not expressed. Like, people know about it, but they don't like to interfere. Like, nobody wants to express themselves. Nobody, shares posts on social media. Like, we know what's happening there, but we're avoiding any kind of discussion because of the fact that we've seen several, for example, petitions trying to save people who lost their jobs for posting pro-Palestinian posts on social media. So, like, I've received a minimum of 10. One by the, it's always, of course, community support. So medical practitioners, there are medical students, as I told you, several of them were prevented from choosing their whatever preferred kind of specialization. I shared the link to one of the it's a Jewish group of physicians, Canadian physicians, who are using their influence to stop those pro-Palestinian and specifically Palestinian medical students from doing their specialization, whatever it has to be done in order to get to their degrees beyond. I think I'm not sure whether it's beyond the medical practitioner or something else, to be consulted. I'm not sure about the details, but I already shared the link. And it has some screenshots of those conversations inside those groups, physical Canadian physicians, Jewish Canadian physicians, and the conversations on how they're going to stop any pro-Palestinian, and specifically those who go public, who express their opinions, publicly speaking. However, still, we do not find so many voices that publicly go against this kind of support. They do it, but discreetly. So this is why it's not very well known to people outside of probably Canada and North America. I wouldn't have known about it. I'm on Twitter. I follow all media outlets, everything, but you will not find this expressed very easily. It's something that you have to look for in order to find. So I know for sure that we haven't lost what we call the discursive battle, or the media war, whatever it is, because unfortunately because of the amounts or the numbers of people killed. Right? It's so difficult to support Israel at this point. even if people are totally against Hamas, and even if they don't think this has been any form of resistance, whatever they want to call it, it's so difficult to support Israel at this point. I am also the vice president of the Canadian Association for Post-Colonial Studies, right? We failed as an association to form a statement on Gaza, even though we're supposed, like we as the executive committee, we met together, we wrote something that I thought was politically correct without being antagonistic to any party, but it took ages for this to get published, and I'm not even sure whether they ever published it or not. I know that they decided to maybe edit it, but after all, like, we're academics. Well, people have their fears, right? If you're targeted, if you lose your job, it's not easy to express your opinion anymore. Like, even signing a petition in order to save someone who lost their jobs is becoming difficult, because you have to provide your postal code, and you have to say like where exactly you live, and because you have to sign it with like full identity revealed. So it's becoming like even more difficult. People are kind of deterred from, like, it's worked, on this level. Israeli like influence has worked, but on the like human level, people do feel, of course, that there has been and there is an ongoing catastrophe as we're going now. Rafah is under attack. Rwanda was talking about how Egyptians are failing their neighbors. Well, I fully understand her position as an Egyptian myself. So yeah, it's hard. It's been hard. It might get better. I'm not sure. Maybe if the United States becomes a little bit, more lenient on its support, or like a little bit less, maybe not more neutral. Let's put it this way.
How about you, Carol? And then from Carol, we'll go to Stella, if Stella wants to say something.
Yeah, I'll try and be brief. I think that, yeah, it's worse in North America and in Germany. I noticed in the comments, Karen was asking if the recording could be made available for German people who weren't able to get the links. So I think that would be possible. But yeah, I think that, in a situation where people are afraid to speak out, that's a symptom of a totalitarian regime, and it's worrying. And I think that picking up on something that Glenn was saying earlier, that the support for the Zionist cause, extreme Zionism in particular, that you were sort of referring to, Ambrose, I think that it undermines our democracy, and we have to, be aware of that and watch out for that, and call it out as well. And I also wanted to say that I'm not quite sure why Atif wasn't able to join us, but I am concerned because he has a lot of family in Rafah, and there was just, as I just mentioned, that Rafah is under fire at the moment. So I just hope he's okay.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you. Stella, did you want to say something?
Hi. Well, first, I just wanted to thank everyone, because it's been really brilliant. I've learned a huge amount from just listening to what everybody's been saying. But for some reason, I think I'm just sort of reflecting back on history a little bit and thinking about how our voices in the UK are being silenced as well, and how difficult it is to make work that responds to what's happening in Palestine at the moment, and how much sort of no platforming that's going on, and how it seems to be easier to get a theatre to host something that's raising money for the IDF than it is to get a theatre to stage something about Palestine. And I was remembering that in 1966, the Royal Shakespeare Company at the Aldwych Theatre in the West End staged a production called US, which was about the Vietnam War and about British attitudes to the Vietnam War, and how kind of unbelievable that would be now for a major West End theatre to stage a Royal Shakespeare Company production of something about Palestine, and it just shows the kind of the journey that we've been on in terms of being silenced and political work and work that's sort of motivated by activism being so difficult to get a platform for. And I suppose I'm curious to know how we can resist that, resist our own voices being silenced, because we think we have a voice, but actually our voices are being silenced a lot.
Thank you. And then before we go to Eva, I'm going to ask another question, another two sets of questions. The first one is, because sometimes what we need to do is we need to go back. We need to look at the past to understand the present. And hopefully when we do that, we can possibly chart a different course. My question was going to be, how did we get to this place right now where Israel can commit genocide with impunity, and the mainstream media especially, can carry on as if it's not happening? How did we get here?
Ambrose, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to run because I'm 3 hours ahead. So I need to run. But I think just to answer your previous question, and I'm quite happy I can duck out on that question you've just asked. That's a pretty epic one.
And also what we need to do to change things.
I think that, like, for me, I think I just bounce between seeing what's going on and feeling complete horror, despair. Obviously with the Freedom Theatre, in 1 year 5 of the team were killed, which isn't necessarily about direct killing of artists. It's just de facto to be in Jenin refugee camp, and Jenin means your life is in constant danger, and therefore 5 members of the team, the sort of extended team, were killed. Obviously, producer is in prison, and other members. And then, of course, what is going on in Gaza, there's just no words. And I think that for me, I sort of bounce between feeling like, as I said, just completely sort of paralyzed, despair. Again, I don't even have the words. And then on the other side, seeing this like huge movement of, as I said, like before, innovation from everyone in Palestine, and then how that has affected people around the world, and this, whether it's in Britain, the US, globally, people standing up, collectively coming together. That change is not going to come from politicians. It's not going to come from people joining the IDF, leaders of the change we need, but people are coming together, and they tend to be not the people in the main institutions or the West End, but there is strength in numbers, and I think that, as I said, it's on one moment despair, and then in another moment it's seeing 1 million people, or being with 1 million people in London who've come together to say no to this, in what's one of the largest marches ever recorded in the history of Britain on anything. And I think that we have to keep coming back to that and keep moving forward. And that's going to affect change, I hope, not just in terms of Palestinian rights, but all of the issues that the world is facing, and are going to be, continued battles. So that I suppose that's how I feel, both very negative and very positive, and sometimes that jumps within a few seconds of each other and back again. But I just want to say I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to run. But thank you so much. It's been really a pleasure to be here and hear everyone's thoughts, and I will catch up on everything else, because this is being recorded. So sending love.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you very much. Thank you. Rawand, did you want to say something before you leave?
Yeah, actually, I missed what did you ask, because my internet is crazy.
Just
But yeah,
Yeah. So I was just
but for
asking.
me, thank you so
Yeah.
much for hosting me and our work, and also like with our
Okay. That was hopefully she will be able to come back and just, for final words. Yes, yes, Eva.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to say a little bit about making theatre at the moment in the UK. Obviously, back in 2000 and was it 2010 when Barack Obama was inaugurated? There was again an invasion of Gaza, and Carol Churchill's play was put on at the Royal Court to raise money for the children of Gaza, and was called, and accusations of anti-Semitism were raised then. So those accusations for artists making theatre in those mainstream venues are not immune to those attacks. But I guess I kind of always interested in who is in the theatre. And it seems to me that a lot of activist political theatre that we make is preaching to the converted. We need to, be addressing the people who, are less clear, less sure, maybe ambivalent, and unafraid to know, who they should support. It's those people that we need to be addressing. And our government is, as has been talked about already, have taken a very hardline position. And we saw this during the apartheid, South Africa apartheid. In the end, it was actually people, I think, that brought to bear the pressure to governments internationally through economic boycotts. But it doesn't seem to me, that took decades to be able to achieve. The Palestinian people don't have decades. We don't have decades. So, I echo a lot of what Zoe and we are all sharing here this evening, which is, yes, the role of the artists, but how do we, get that, how do we galvanize ordinary people to take to the streets, to make those economic decisions, to impact on Israel, and express our views and stand up for the people of Gaza to make those changes? Because at the moment, I don't feel comfortable making a piece of theatre at the moment, when I just feel like the only people who are in the theatre are the people that are already on board with the arguments. So it's a dilemma. It's a dilemma, but there's an urgency about this, which I just don't know. I don't know what to do. We're all doing everything that we possibly can in terms of petitions and social media and demonstrations, but I just don't know what to do.
Thank you. That is an important, useful, statement. It means that we are looking for answers. So it's important. So we'll hold it. Rewand, did you want to say what you would like people listening to do?
I think Rowan might have to.
I hope the internet is so bad. So yeah, and just like I was telling that, thank you for hosting me, and also for me that I would like to continue to support Jeanine, so that everyone knows about Jeanine. It's very important, like to all, especially for the artists outside the world, like to know how we fight to continue our work, and also like to save our artists, because we want them alive, and no one don't want to see them and dead or they will be killed. And also we will continue talking about, I know it's very difficult to get me sometimes like.
Thank you, Leon. Thank you. I will, and also Caroline, both Caroline and B. We'll follow up on this, because it would really be good to see what you, as the artists who are in the middle of, who are experiencing this, what you would like us who are, you know, a bit removed from what is happening, what you would like us to do, how you would like us to support you. We look forward to that conversation as well. So we were due to end at 7:30. We are a few minutes past that. So maybe what we do is we end on a note. Anyone who wants to speak can unmute and just talk about what you think we can do to make things better. How do we challenge the silencing that Israel is committing? Not only Israel, but also other governments like Britain, like Canada, like what's happening in the US, you know, and also how do we change this? How do we stop this insanity, this madness, this genocide? How do we stop it? What do we do? Anyone? And also, as a, you know how
huge questions. It's almost like another session. But yeah, I mean, I think that. Oh,
well, it has a simple answer for me. We need another revolution in Egypt. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything's gonna be solved once we have just a new revolution in Egypt, and Gaza's problem is solved forever.
Thank you. Yes, Caroline, you're saying.
No, I was just saying that it's a big question, but yes, if people wanted to get in touch with any ideas about a further discussion, you know, we could think about that.
How about you, Karen? Karen and then Debbie.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you mean me, but I would just encourage people as they get information about businesses or industries that are supporting these war efforts, that they spread the word in whatever way they can. I think that some of the demonstrations here in the US against some of the military industrial complex have been pretty significant. They get a lot of coverage, and working with lobbying groups that are effective to get anything that you want to get. There are a couple of groups in the US who are pretty effective, and I think we're somewhat effective in the Yemen, were the Quaker groups. They're good lobbyists. They know how to get the word to people. And the other thing is to stop paying taxes. That you know, follow the money in the US. If we cut the money off, and again, I don't know how things work in other countries, but we have systems where we put part of the paychecks that we make into a fund that gets held back for federal taxes and state taxes. Leave the state taxes alone. They're not at war with anybody. But the federal taxes, you can withdraw from that system and not have that money held by your employer to go to the government kind of automatically at tax time. So I can get out of that system for a number of reasons, because it's being invested unwisely is the number one that most people are affected by. They invested in whatever, like military, munitions and things like that. But the other is to send a very strong message to the federal government that we ain't paying for this, okay? You know, what they want to do with that message, that's up to them. But, you know, I put a couple of their comments in about really pressing for another candidate for president of the US to be strongly considered for a number of reasons. Thank you so much for this. I learned a lot. I will be incorporating it into my art, which is writing. And I really appreciate whatever you can do to give people an alternative way of thinking and believing than the propaganda. Thank you, and thanks for hosting this.
Thank you, Karen, and also thank you, Az. Thank you very much. I'll be in touch. I think we've got follow-ups to do, but thank you. And then we hear from Debbie, and then Stella, and then Eva.
Yeah, just a couple of things quickly. I think there is a tax way for us to do in UK. I'm not sure, but yesterday there was people were encouraged with that date to withdraw their accounts from Barclays, and I think, you know, maybe a couple of thousand have done that, and there's more ways. Barclays was very key in South Africa, and there've been a lot of actions around Barclays Bank today, and this will increase. And I think you're right, it's targeting carefully where to do with the boycott organization that's out of Palestine has identified key places that we can focus on boycotting. Just as a grassroots thing, there's going to be in West London, there's going to be a carcade around the area, a bit like, you know, Candidates Shout, that's going to go to areas where people haven't necessarily come forward, things like that. But just from where I am, I've got a weekly program on Resonance FM, the Outer Globe, and I'm very happy to focus on anything that anybody wants to put forward. It might be as small as a voiced WhatsApp message, or I might be able to do a full Zoom interview, certainly like Freedom Theatre. But I mean, any artistic endeavor, I'm very willing to. I mean, I'm very happy to have that platform, and so far I seem to be able to get away with calling for ceasefire every week and playing key tracks. It's mostly African music, but it goes very wide. It's whatever I like, so I'm very happy to do that, and I'm always looking for new content.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll also be in touch. So thank you. Yeah. Stella, you wanted to say something, and then we go to Eva.
Just quickly, thank you so much for this as well.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on Eva's comment about kind of the echo chamber that we're all in the arts, and just it might be quite useful to have another session where some of us come together to talk about how we can use our art to influence people outside of our normal sphere of influence, thinking about how we can do things kind of hyper locally perhaps, or I mean, I'm kind of really conscious that with the shadow banning with social media, none of my posts are getting to anybody. You know, about 3 people like my posts now if they've got Palestine in them. So just thinking about how we can begin to have more conversations outside of the echo chamber. I live in an area where hardly any people are active around Palestine solidarity. So some of the creatives around here in West Yorkshire are getting together to do some kind of local guerrilla art and activism and conversations with communities. We just don't really know whether what we've got planned is going to work, or whether there's any precedent for it, or whether people have tried it before, what we want to do, and whether it's worth doing it. So actually bringing some artists together who want to think about having influence outside of the normal theatre audiences or whatever, or normal readership of their work, might be quite useful and galvanizing, and there might be people with some really great experience that they can share that we can learn from.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just quickly, don't give up. Let's just keep going, doing every little thing. As Desmond Tutu said, we each need to do our little bit, so we don't give up. And there are general elections coming up, and that may not be quick enough for the people in Rafah, who's, we send our prayers to, every day, and to the people of Gaza and the West Bank. But there are general elections, in this country, in the States. We have to keep going. We have to keep going, because we can make a difference. And this may be a critical point. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that note, instead of me giving the conclusion and end note, etc., that honor will be Caroline's, because Caroline was really we did this together. This wouldn't have happened without Caroline involvement, suggestion, and also her contacts. So I think Caroline will give the end note.
I'd like to thank you, Eva, and I'd like to Ambrose, and I also want to say I'd like to second Eva's message. It's very important, and therefore I think that a session like this is good, because it allows us to both express the difficulties we're up against, but also it encourages us to keep persisting as the important thing. So thank you very much.
So on that note, we'll stop here for now, and we will pick this conversation up again another time with different speakers, because we are not letting this go. I think what is happening is appalling. It is beyond appalling. I do not have any words to talk about how I feel about what I am seeing, and I think it is particularly tragic that it is Israel that is committing genocide this time. I would have thought that, given the experiences that Jewish people had during the Holocaust, that we would have learned better, known better, understood the science, and also be prepared to do everything we can to make sure that what happened in the 1940s does not happen again. But so I'm horrified, totally heartbroken, and devastated, beyond sad by what is happening. And I hope the killings stop. This, and I hope Palestinians and Israelis will find another way of relating to each other that doesn't involve the atrocities we are seeing now. This do not have a place in the world we are living in. Totally unacceptable. So that is my end note. So on that note, I say thank you, and see you again next time, and hopefully during better times. Thank you very much.
Thank you.